Welcome back to Boys and Ghouls Film Review, folks. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson. This is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi.
And just so you guys know, before I begin today's podcast, I thought I should tell you guys that we were just renovating or redecorating our studio.
Renovating. Yeah. Making new desks and bookcases and stuff, and unplugging everything and plugging it back in again, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly so. So I'll show you some photos before this podcast goes out, so you guys get an idea of what it looks like.
Dear old Dad. Yeah.
Anyway, so let's begin today's movie review. Tonight we'll be reviewing the Goonies that was released in 1985. Isn't that right, Mike?
That's correct. Yeah, an American adventure comedy film. Mm-hmm. Now, I thought that Steven Spielberg produced or directed it. He didn't. He wrote the story.
Yeah.
Okay. Silly me.
Yeah, same thing. I used to thought it was done by George Lucas too.
Yeah, he had help.
I would have thought he had a hand in it. Maybe he did.
He might have. But
considering that this is a fantasy and like a lot of films that I've watched over the years, it usually has either Stephen or George involved in the script writing or the movie or the.
And they hang out together and stuff. The besties and stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's hard to break that type of connection these days. Like Danny Elfman working with Tim Burton.
That sort of stuff, yeah. Okay, look, here we go. Well, I've already mentioned that he wrote it. Okay, here we go. Produced by Richard Donner and Harvey Bernhard. Directed by Richard Donner. Mm-hmm. Story by Steven Spielberg. Screenplay was written by Chris Columbus. Wow. I've heard that name somewhere before, and I don't mean about the Explorer before you say anything. Mm-hmm. I think I've seen the name somewhere else. Anyway, it was a really good story.
Yeah, you may know, guys. I also met Sean Aston not many years ago.
Oh, not many, a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, during sort of a supernova expo, and I got him to autograph my copy of The Goonies, a book that I had, and he also let me kiss him.
Lucky one of them.
Yeah, very memorable. But imagine for him, it's not so memorable. It's just another fan who's obsessed with him.
Obsessed? Yes, I can see that. Okay. A couple of the actors here. Gee, I wonder who one of them is. Sean Aston.
Surprise.
Surprise. Yeah, he played... Okay, I won't go through everybody's who they are. Yeah. Okay, Sean Aston, he's Mike. He's sort of like an unofficial leader of the group. Mm-hmm. Josh Brolin plays Brandon, one of the older guys, the brother of Mikey.
This is called Brand, like as in signage brand.
Like, Brandon in the morning. Jeff Cohen plays Chunk. He's a funny little fella.
Yeah.
Corey Feldman plays Mouth Devereaux. And you find out why he's called Mouth. Yep. Okay. He never shuts up, and he's also he's a bit of a smart aleck. Jonathan Ke-Huy Kwan, Jonathan Ke-Huy Kwan is Data Wang, and he was actually
He was in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yep. So he gets around.
Yeah, well,
as a kid actor.
Of course, now I don't think he's done anything since Indiana Jones or this movie.
He's on himself together doing something else.
I think he's quit the acting industry and has moved on to other things.
Another great adventure. Now, Kerry Green plays Andy, Brand's girlfriend, the love interest. Martha Plimpton plays Steph, which is Andy's best friend, bestie. I won't go on too many more. John Matuszak, I think, as Lotney Sloth Fratelli. He's a deformed but and abused but child-hearted son of the mean guys in the movie. Yeah.
I thought it was he was a funny guy.
Yeah. Anne Ramsey plays Mother Dearest. He's like Ma Baker.
Yeah, she creeps me out.
Robert Davey plays one of her sons, and Joe Palantino plays one of the other sons.
Ooh,
I won't
think
go
I know
through
him.
the rest of them.
I think I know who he is. He's been in, I think, was he the one from License to Kill, I think it was?
Oh, possibly, I don't know.
I think I wasn't sure which
Anyway,
one it is.
They get around.
I know for a fact he does play an awesome bad guy, and I think he also plays an interesting detective in what's it called? Maniac Cop.
Oh, okay.
2 and 3, obviously. If you watch the movies.
Interesting. The director, Richard Donner, makes a cameo appearance as a sheriff's deputy.
Yeah, I've seen that.
The film cinematographer Nick McLean also has a cameo as Mouth's father.
Oh, yeah.
And the part of the dead FBI agent, he was in a freezer, was performed by stuntman Ted Grossman.
Grossman.
Just gross. Yeah. Anyway, all said and done. I won't talk about any other people.
No.
So Sarah's going to enthrall you with her tale of adventure and whatever, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Okay, so the story opens on the title card, which starts off with a skull and crossbow, and then we move in, we see Steven Spielberg presents, and then we zoom out and see it turn into a different skull, but underneath is the word Goonies.
Very nicely done.
And there's no
Very
music,
tasteful.
no things behind it, but then we cross to the prison, where a prisoner named, what's his name again?
One of the Fratelli boys.
Fratelli boys.
A recently escaped fugitive. That's Robert Davey. He's Jake Fratelli.
Okay, Jake Fratelli. He escapes from prison after faking a suicide attempt.
Yeah.
And he eventually escapes with his brother, his mum, and they eventually have a police chase. And there we meet, along the way, throughout this scene, each of the members of the Goonie party. We meet all the kids, and eventually we come to the end of of that particular the chase, and we meet Mikey and his brother Brandon, as Mike says, and both brothers are Mikey's different. He's a younger brother, and he longs for adventure, but he doesn't want to move away from his home. At the moment, the country club owns Goondocks. That's the name of their community or suburb or whatever the street they're living in, and they're planning on developing it and turning it into a golf course.
Somewhere.
Yeah, and that means that they're given either a few hours of spending in in the community, and
well, they knew that was going to come. That's not pay work and get out. So
yeah. And of course, Mikey has high hopes that his dad will fix it. Hopefully, get some money in. Maybe try to raise the funding. Who knows? I don't know the whole truth of what he thinks his dad's influences are. Mostly, considering his dad's a curator at a museum.
Yeah. They wouldn't get paid a lot of money. Not in those little towns.
No, those little towns. Anyway, Brandon, on the other hand, he's a wrestler and a bit of a football player.
He's an athlete
at school, and he treats his brother like crap sometimes.
And who wouldn't?
And what older brother or older sister does that? I ask you.
You would?
Yeah. I had that happen to me when I was little. I had to put up with my sister and her whatever.
And her whatever. Yeah,
okay, now moving on from that relationship. Then Mouth and the others come over, and each one of them has different views on how they're going to move forward in their lives. Data plans on going to Detroit because his father has brothers who own a restaurant up there in order to continue, get a job. And let me see, Chunk's family, I don't know too much about them. I know Mouth's father is a plumber, the plumber Mike mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. And, well, anyway, moving on. Eventually, the mum, Mrs. Walsh, arrives, and she brings a Mexican or Spanish lady named Rosalia.
Rosalita, I think.
Yeah. Who is planning on helping Mrs. Walsh, who has an injured arm. In the backstory for her injured arm, she accidentally put her hand in a washing machine and it got damaged. Don't ask me. It's in the book. Read it.
Did he fix the washing machine?
Yeah, right.
Oh, sorry.
You have to read the book to understand the backstory, guys.
It's not that important.
It's not important. Anyway, Rosa is there to help Mrs. Walsh to get everything packed up.
To move out. Yeah.
So they can move out. Anyway, she gets Mouth to translate. I say translate because it's really silly, the scene.
The Rosalie doesn't speak English, and Mrs. Mikey's mum doesn't speak Spanish, so Mikey's mate, Mouth,
yes.
has studied Spanish and knows how to speak Spanish reasonably well.
Yeah, reasonably enough to
get in trouble
for it. And in 3 scenes, when he's told to translate it into something sensible to Rosa, he translates it and turns it into something dreadful for that poor lady.
Taking the heroin and the marijuana and
always separate the drugs.
Keep them separate. Yeah.
And then when he's told to make sure that Rosalie doesn't go up in the attic, he says, "Do not go up there. Mrs. Walsh has his sex torture devices up there."
So he's taking the pee right out of the poor.
And the final one is a bit weird, and she remarks in Spanish that she's in a madhouse.
Well, it's pretty close.
Anyway, meanwhile, while this is happening, the kids have broken a statue. King David statue.
Yeah, statue of David. You know, the old Willie. He got broken.
Yes, and Chuck accidentally turned the Willie upside down.
Well, he glued it back on a wrong way up. So, you got an erection. It's normal.
And Brand says, if God made it that way, you'd be pissing in your faces. There is a lot of funny jokes throughout this movie. And
it's a comedy adventure, an adventure comedy.
And throughout this movie, sometimes they would often say the words wrong, or right, Mike?
Yeah, one of them was saying, was it Mike? You were saying?
Yeah, he says dictate himself, and when it's delude himself.
Yeah.
It's just like when I looked at the movie, where to find scary things. That movie, where the kid kept making up wrong words and say them to the wrong people all the time. So,
whatever.
Anyway, back to the story. Mrs. Walsh and Rosa, they go off to the supermarket, whatever, and tells Brandon to look after his brother and not to take him outside. He has hay fever and asthma. Other crap. And doesn't want him getting sick. And anyway, eventually when the mother and Rosa leave, the kids decide to go up to the attic and check out some stuff up there. And, of course, most of the stuff is from the museum, mostly probably from the basement that's been probably ready for the dustbins or something like that. Anyway, there's some interesting stuff, pirate stuff, all that stuff.
Stuff from the museum. They had other stuff apart from the pirate stuff, historical stuff from the area.
Yeah.
Some wasn't that interesting, but just stuff that overflow from the museum. How's that?
Yeah. And Mikey finds a map that's inside a frame, and he allows Chuck to hold it, and I think he was just doing this just so he can get it out.
Chuck will drop it.
Yes.
No, Chunk, not Chuck.
Chuck is always
very clumsy. You give me something sprayable, it'll be broken.
I also should mention Chuck is also, he often makes up stories. He's like he's just stupid when it comes to storytelling. Yeah. He would just, when he came into the Walsh's house, he tells them about a car chase, and they don't believe him.
Because of all the other stories he tells.
Yeah, made it up. Like, he's told them about how Michael Jackson visited his house, yada, yada, yada.
It was his sister. It's okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right, which one?
Yes, and the stories don't really help him and his friends as they go along. So, moving back on. They eventually find this map, and Mouth translates it, and it sounds really, really creepy. from a young kid's perspective, I was scared myself whenever I see this. I gotta admit, whenever I look at this movie, it does have a dark theme to it, which made me question back then, even now, whether it was appropriate for younger kids to watch.
It was. You're a sook, that's all, yeah.
I don't know. It was dark and it was creepy.
When I was a kid, I grew up with Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman and the creatures from Black Lagoon and all the other good crappy movies.
But anyway,
no
it hasn't bothered me 1 inch because it kept me going back for more whenever I watched the Goonies. Anyway, moving on. Eventually, Mikey recites the story of who owns the map. It was One-Eye Willie, a dangerous pirate that goes way back years ago, and he had this big treasure, and he had on his ship, and the British soldiers chased after him, and he and his men were in a cave. They were inside a cave, and then the British blew up the walls inside the cave, sealing the pirates inside the cave. And of course, Chuck asked him, "Wait a minute, Mikey. If they couldn't get out, how the map and the story got out?" And then Mikey says that there must have been one of the pirates must have got out, and with the map and everything, and with the story and all that stuff.
There you
and
go.
they found out.
Easy.
Yeah, they found out there was another person who went after One-Eye Willie's treasure and never returned. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's Chester Copperpot. Mm-hmm. What a name.
Yeah, he said he had a key to One-Eye Willie, meaning... Anyway, eventually the kids decide to disperse and head downstairs because someone's knocking at their door. It turns out to be one of the guys who from the country club. I should mention the country club were the guys who owned the part of the Goondocks who planned on developing it.
They don't own it. They're actually they got ties with the bank, and they're picking up the mortgages because they're overdue on their payments, and they're getting to sign the properties over to them.
Yeah.
Somehow or other.
Yeah. See, one of the boys in their town is named Troy, whose father is one of the guys who wants them to sign over their properties, yada, yada, yada. And Walsh is just one of those guys who has not bothered to sign yet. Isn't that right, Mike?
Probably. It looks like it. I don't know if anyone else has signed or was going to sign. Who was the main one? I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know how that works. Eventually, they hand over the paperwork to Brandon and head off. And they say a foreclosure is a definite, meaning there's no way for any one of the Goondocks to walk out of it and get their mortgages paid off. Eventually, the boys, they make a firm decision and say, yes, we're going to go after this treasure and be able to pay off the mortgage and be able to save our community. They eventually tie Brandon to the chair with using his gym equipment, and they scatter out the door. Eventually, he does get caught by his mum and Rosa, and Rosa thinks it's a torture device attached to him. Oh man, you gotta really read the book.
She thinks it's very funny. I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Eventually, the boys drive on their bikes. Of course, Mouth, doing the silly thing, decides to kind of pops the tires on Brandon in order to the
he
him not to follow
pop
them.
The tires. He released the valves so the air would go out of them.
Okay, release the valve, whatever. Anyway,
pop the tires.
Pop the pop.
Okay, you see what I got to deal with here.
Yeah. So anyway, the boys ride on, and they found spots around them that pretty much show where. That most of the parts of Astoria, this is where it is, Astoria.
Actually, it was set in Astoria, and they did all the filming in Astoria, apart from the stuff they did in the studio.
Yeah, and some of the parts of the of Astoria hasn't changed, apart from a few earthquakes, a few volcano eruptions. Other than that, the map's details still look like the same as their coast, where they have to go to. Isn't that right, Mike?
Hasn't changed much at all. Those little villages, seaside areas, or whatever, don't change a lot.
That's true. Anyway, Brandon eventually finally gets on his bike, but unfortunately the bike, as we said, no air. So he ends up stealing Data's little sister's bike.
He got this big kid riding a little kiddie's bike. It looks so cute.
Yeah, and when he's riding her bike, he runs into Troy and Andy, his girlfriend, obviously, and Stephanie, who are riding in Troy's car. And Troy grabs hold of Brandon's hand, and then he drives full speed up the road, and causing Brandon to swing into fall into the trees. Boom. Awful. Anyway.
This is going to be a long podcast now, don't you? Yeah.
Eventually, the kids find a match to where maybe the possible of the location to get down to where the treasure might be buried, or so they think. They eventually arrive at a sort of a summer place, restaurant.
An old restaurant which has been closed up.
Yeah, and we see two men walking in, and I think that they're just two plain police officers or detectives.
And you hear bang.
Yeah, and then we hear two bangs.
Right, two bangs.
Yeah, and of course the kids just think that maybe just a pot fell in the kitchen, but I doubt it. Doesn't sound anything like a pot. Anyway, eventually they go inside the restaurant, and then they can meet the mother, who's really creepy, and they also meet her son, the Spanish one, who starts speaking in
He's
Spanish.
Italian.
Italian, sorry.
Spanish.
Sorry, there's a lot of... Okay, anyway.
It's Spanish. It's Italian.
Italian, sorry.
Fratelli?
Anyway, he eventually says a bit of Italian, and Mouth was who starts mouthing off in stupidity-wise. Eventually, which got him into trouble because she was about to cut his tongue out if he didn't shut up. Wouldn't you say, Mike?
Well, she was a very nice lady, yes, yeah.
Eventually, they order water while they sit down in the restaurant, and
it was rusty as, really bad. It looked like Coke on a bad day.
It looked like Scotch on a bad day.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because of how orange it looked.
It looked terrible, yeah.
It made me
bad.
For when I was little, I used to thought maybe it was toilet water.
Close. It could have been a turd floating in it, yeah.
Eventually, Mikey pretends to go to the toilet, and thanks to Mouth with his weird behaviour, he kind of probably really needed to go to the toilet. Right? Would you say, Mike?
Well,
he started
when you got to go, you got to go.
All that stuff. Anyway, he then goes down to the lower level downstairs, and he meets the creepy other brother, Sloth.
He's lovely.
Of course, his brother, the Italian brother, starts teasing him with his food.
They're all Italian.
Okay, he teases him a lot, and eventually, Mikey eventually gives him the food that was on a bit of a tray, and eventually he sees the creature and he kind of scatters away until he meets his brother, and they all scatter out.
Skimper, 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 scatter, scatter, scatter. There you go.
And there, Mikey tells his brother and his friends about a giant in the basement, if you can call it that. And while this is happening, they watch the tellies taking out a very big garbage bag, and they think it's, Mikey says it's restaurant trash. Doubt it. If two men walked in, and what happened to them? Yeah, what happened to the two men? I don't know.
It's just going to be a really long podcast.
I'm trying to keep it short, okay? Anyway, while the car drives away, Andy and Stephanie arrive and to meet up with them, and the kids plan on going back inside the restaurant. Unfortunately, it was locked. And then Mouth decides to do the stupid thing by saying to Chuck that he has some photos of his mother naked, taking a bath, and would you like to buy them? And eventually Chuck charged at the door like he was
broke
stupid.
The door down. Hey, what a good way to get the door broken down without hurting yourself. Get somebody else to do it.
They then head down into the basement where they can meet the creature, and eventually they do find the possible way of getting down to the lowest level, because that's what it says in the map. They have to go to the lowest level of the floor to get to.
They found a basement and a bit of a drainage hole type thing underneath the fireplace. There was a grate there.
Yeah.
It went down to a cave system.
While they're in the basement, they also find a printer, one of those counterfeit printers.
Yeah, they're making lots of money.
Yeah, fake money. Anyway, they realize that these guys are wanted criminals.
Well, I don't want them.
Then we also discover the fridge where one of the guys from earlier that is stuffed in
That
there.
was the guy doing the cameo.
Yes.
That was that, the part of the dead FBI agent performed by
Yeah.
Ted Grossman. He looks so real.
Yeah, and we got the fright of their lives, and eventually they quickly stuffed the guy back in the fridge, and with Chuck is stuck inside the fridge with the stiff. Yeah. And so the kids quickly, they knew that they have to go down through the grate to get out of there because there's no other way out. So they quickly get down to the lowest, in through the fireplace where the grate is, and quickly get down into the sewer or whatever.
The sewer?
Well, it's close.
Cave system.
Cave system. And of course, Chuck does eventually get out of the freezer, and he's told by Brandon and Mike to go to the police, even though he's the last person anyone will believe. Would you agree?
Well, I wouldn't believe him.
Yeah. Anyway, so while Chuck is going off to get the police, the rest of the group continue on through the cave system. Of course, along the way, they come across a pipe system. Pipes, and they think that if they rattle them enough, they might get someone above to hear them. So they try to yell, they start shouting, they start climbing on the pipes, and just so you guys know, above is actually the country club. This is really funny, and this is where a lot of the pipes start breaking off and start. There was like the scene where the showers, where the taps kind of start getting pulled
through the wall.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Yeah. And there's the toilets that kind of sprouted water,
flush backwards,
like it was a spring or something. It was hilarious.
Yeah, Old Faithful. Yeah, okay. Now, will you move on a bit, a little bit?
Yeah, I got to admit, I love the aftermath in the book, where what became of the country club.
This is going to be a long one.
Eventually, they come to the next part to the cave, and there they find Chester Copperpot's dead remains. Would you say?
Considering he's been there for quite a few years, I'd say his remains are pretty dead, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Of course Andy was scared of a witch. She screamed like heck, like a banshee.
Okay, whatever.
And anyway, they kind of check him over, try to look for his ID and stuff, and eventually they confirmed it was Chester Copperpot, and because his ID says so. They also find some candles on him, including some dynamite, I might mention later on.
I need that later.
Yeah, and then Data takes them, and he plans on setting some booby traps. Booby traps. It's a joke. I'm kidding, guys.
Don't worry about it.
Don't ask.
It's only a joke in her head. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's what they say. They keep saying they mistake the words a lot for this movie.
Yeah, but it's a booby trap. That's what they're called.
I know. Anyway, back to the story. Mikey then discovers the key that Chester Copperpot had, and he takes it, and eventually he finds also one of the booby traps that One Eye Willie set it up years ago, which had boulders hanging above them, and they have to quickly scatter and try to get away from them before they got crushed, and end up having the same fate as Chester Copperpot, wouldn't you say?
Well, he didn't fare very well. No, he was dead and from something fell on him or whatever.
I think he just he kind of got killed by one of those boulder things. Eventually, the kids quickly get out of there, and they come across a boulder blocking another cave, and they think they hear noises, and then they pull it apart, and then a lot of bats start scatting all over the face.
That's a bat cave. Oh, there you go then. No, true.
Yeah. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Chuck eventually tries to get away from the Fratelli's house, but eventually he runs into the same criminals again, and they attempt to try to cut his hand open if he doesn't tell them everything that he knows. And I mean everything. You think me talking at you guys about telling you guys about the movie will be everything? Well, he told them his whole entire history.
He did.
It was long. And eventually, as they were about to cut off his hand, the bats started swarming all over them, all over their faces, all over their. It was really creepy. And Chuck was yelling yelling on the tip of his tongue, saying to Mikey that's out there. If you can hear me, run, run. They come after you, all that stuff like that.
They're coming to get you, Barbara. No, sorry. Wrong movie. Sorry.
Anyway, back to the cave. Everyone is getting scared, and Mikey offers to hold Andy's hand to comfort her. And eventually, the next room, we see, wow, a beautiful waterfall, and we see like thousands of coins, a few cents here and there, and we find out that they're inside a wishing well, wouldn't you say?
Yes, the old wishing well in the town. Yeah.
Yeah, and the coins, you don't ask, they're not going to be worth $1 million, if you ask me. Would you say, Mike?
Well, no.
There's no chance in hell that money would be able to pay
Actually,
for the mortgages.
the thing that bugs me about that scene...
What's that?
Well, as far as I'm aware, most of the wishing wells that you had were actually set up by the local towns people and used to throw coins into them and actually used to scoop the coins out and give to charity.
Oh, really?
Not just throw them in a hole in the ground.
I see.
Yeah.
I guess Steven Spielberg didn't put much thought into that. Doesn't matter.
Well, maybe.
Anyway, so they realize that they're in a wishing well, and there's no chance this money is One-Eye Willie's money. So they have to make decisions. Eventually, Troy and his mates come there and making some wishes of stupid thing, and eventually Brandon notices him making a wish, and they were able to tell them, guess what, we're down in this well, yada yada yada, we need your help to get us out. And of course he offers to help, and Mikey tries to plead with the rest of the group, telling them that they can continue with this journey because it's their last chance. But they all were getting scared and feel like we don't want to be down here anymore, we want to go home and stuff like that. But Mikey reminds them that this is their last chance of getting the money and probably saving their community. And if they go ahead, turn their back on the Goondocks, then that's the end. Nothing more. Eventually, they see his point of view, and they decided that they'll face the fate of continuing their journey.
Yeah, I wish you would.
Meanwhile, Chuck, on the other hand, he's still with the
Fratellis.
Yeah, and he eventually meets up with Sloth, and Sloth turns out to be an absolute nice guy.
Even though he's a bit strange.
Yeah, at first he's scared of him, and then he eventually realized he's got the mind of a child, as Mike said before. Mm-hmm. And they eventually bond over shared foods, shared interests. Mm-hmm. And eventually they become good friends, and Sloth offers to help him find his friends down inside the fireplace.
Yeah.
No, so back to the story. The Fratellis, they start to make a plan to follow the kids, and they have no problem finding them eventually. And eventually they do. The kids do find the next room to continue their journey, that using the special stones in the wall underneath a waterfall, and using the key, they were able to get the key on there, and they were able to turn it so they can get inside the next room. Unfortunately, it set off another trap. Isn't that right, Mike?
It did.
And this allowed a very big cannonball to go around the room, and eventually it ends up opening a trap door underneath Data's leg, and eventually, thanks to Data's, he's a bit of a inventor, I should mention.
He's a bit like a James Bond freak. How's that?
Yeah, and he's made these inventions. Some of them are really good, some are really crappy.
However,
eventually he uses the pinches of peril, or whatever they call them, to allow him to avoid falling
impaled on some sticks.
To avoid getting impaled. He eventually finds the room, and here in this movie, when they were doing a toilet break, Andy kisses Mikey, not realizing
in
it's
the dark,
Brandon.
Thinking it's Brand.
Yeah, it was kind of cute. Even though, in reality, the actress was not really happy about kissing an underage kid.
But actually...
It happens, guys.
It happens. You have to suffer. Yeah.
You have to suffer for your own.
I don't think Mikey was suffered.
No, he actually in the book, I think he really liked her, to an extent, even though he was underage. Anyway, eventually the Tillys, they knew where they were going. Eventually, the kids quickly dart away from them, and they come across a bit of a log bridge that they have to quickly walk across, but it was very bad because the rope falls away from all repair.
The rope handrail thing was wrong.
Yeah. Quickly the kids quickly walk across or climb across or whatever, and eventually Data, the last one, uses his slick shoes, which has oil slick or something in it, that allows the oil to come out of his feet and allows the Tilly's brothers to end up falling on their crutches.
And guys, you know what it feels like.
Oh yeah, painful. Eventually, the kids find this weird piano or whatever organ thing that's made of skeleton bones, and here it's up to Andy to use her piano skills in order to open the next door.
To read some notes on the back of the map. If you get the notes right, the strawberry gradually lowers down. If you get it wrong, the floor starts to disappear. Aha.
Yeah. So anyway, it's up to her now to get through it. Slowly, but bit by bit, parts of the floor disappear, other parts, the door opens up, and eventually they do find the final note, and she couldn't figure out if it was a B sharp or an A flat. And Mikey jokes, if you hit the wrong note, we'll all be flat. As a bit of a
Very
joke.
Good.
Anyway, eventually she got the note right, and they quickly were able to get away. And this is my favorite part in the movie, where they go down this awesome water slide. What do you say?
Yeah, very good. Actually, I think that was in the trailer.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I thought it was exciting. I mean, it's amazing those kids don't really look like they're having fun in the scene. Maybe they did a couple of times during filming, because who cannot enjoy a water slide? Eventually,
if it was cold, maybe not.
The kids soon arrive at the other end, and this is where the scene... Well, there were going to be an octopus scene in this movie, but somehow I guess it didn't work out.
No, well, they cut it out. But it was mentioned... Octopus was mentioned in the film, but there was no octopus in it.
Yeah, it's confusing. And imagine some of these guys who have viewed this movie probably wonder, what octopus at the end?
Ask Ed Wood. He had all the footage.
Anyway, the kids then look over and see One-Eye Willie's big ship.
The Spanish galleon or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was. And they...
Now, actually, I'll stop you just a minute. They actually made that full-scale boat just for this movie. And at the end of the movie, nobody wanted it, so they just had to trash it.
Ah.
What a shame.
It is a shame.
Carry on.
Anyway, soon enough they head on board and they see lots of skeletons there, lots of the remaining crew members who got killed, probably in a fight maybe, I like to think.
I don't know. There's some rumour that he stuck in there and he dug all the tunnels and everything and put the booby traps in. And I think they committed suicide.
Yeah, I think...
Because they weren't getting out.
Yeah. I like to think that. I mean, it said that One-Eye Wheeler killed all his men. I don't know how he would have done that.
No, I think they might have killed themselves as well, because they would have running out of food and stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually they get down to the lower level to the ship, and there they find... They continue on and they try to find the where the treasure is, and at one point they find something, but Dear Old Mouth says it's just a guide to the cannonball chamber, whatever.
Cannonballs.
They get into a fight briefly, and eventually Andy sets off another trap. We think, we're not sure. Maybe it's a trap.
No, it wasn't a trap.
And
a hatch popped open above their heads. They had something written on it. Yeah,
I think it was the possible message from them inside the map that says, "Ye intruders beware," or "crushing death and grief," or
blah blah blah,
all that stuff.
Anyway, they went up there, and guess what they found?
Yeah, there Mikey sees some One-Eye Willie with two other of his men, maybe his first mate or someone else, and they're both dead. There's
and
a bit of
the treasure hanging around the room.
Yeah, and there he talks to One-Eye Willie, and he sees for himself why One-Eye Willie was called that. Meaning he was born with one eye.
Yeah.
Meaning,
well, there you go then.
Yeah, and
You didn't get poked out in the fight? No,
yeah.
no.
And anyway, the others soon join him, and as they are looking at the gold and stuff like that, Mikey says, "Go ahead, get stuff in your pockets." And as Data is about to reach across to the scales, where
In
next
front
to
of
Willie, Mikey says, "That's Willie's.
Leave it
Save
alone."
that for Willie. Anything else is just fine." And I think Willie would have appreciated it.
He did. He's a nice pirate. Yeah.
Even though we don't know him really well. Anyway, while the kids start pouring the money and coins and anything that they can think of into their pockets and whatever, they begin to worry. What if the criminals are going to still follow them? And Mikey comes up with an alternate plan by saying, "We'll leave a trail of jewels in one cave, and then we'll hide in another one. And when the tellers are in that cave, then we can make our run for it." But then we hear...
What a good idea.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what Mummy says.
Yeah, she'll stand right behind them.
Yeah, and now
Whoops.
it's up to them to try to weasel their way out. But unfortunately, Data's equipment doesn't work so well this time around. And eventually they came close to getting walked off the plank. And before they could do that, they were forced to remove all the jewelry, all the diamonds, all the money out of their pockets.
Ma Fratelli. Yeah.
Yeah, of course it's funny when in the scene where Mouth has a tire pearl and a lot of other stuff in his mouth.
Mouth was emptying his pockets and he wasn't saying anything. And Mrs. Fratelli, Ma Fratelli, said, "You're pretty quiet." And he obviously had something in his mouth, so out with it. So he started pulling out a strong string of a pearl necklace.
Yeah.
A long string of pearls. And it must have been 12 to 18 inches long. And
Go on.
he still had stuff in his mouth.
Yeah.
And then he spat out a couple of gems. And then he's still sitting there, looks like another gem came out. He had a big mouth, talking wise, and he had a great capacity otherwise.
Yeah. Anyway, Miss Ma was planning on to walk the kids off the plank in her own way, so she tries to do it this with Andy. Eventually, Brandon tries to save her,
True love.
And then Ma says, "Two down, who's next?" Triumph way. Anyway, while this is happening, as Mouth and Stephanie are going next, we then hear a battle cry, if you can call it that, and we realize it's Sloth and Chuck who have come safely through the thing and discreetly have come to save Chuck's friends.
Yeah.
And Sloth was able to swing across and save the kids from being certainly killed, and then they quickly dive into the water while Sloth deals with his brothers and his ma. And eventually he knocks out his brothers when they're fighting. They're always fighting in this movie. It's hilarious.
Well, brotherly love, hey.
Anyway, he then meets his mum, and she reminisces about how some nice stuff about him, and he remembers that she dropped him once when he was a baby.
Yeah.
And then he takes his revenge by hurling her off into the water.
Yeah, well, there you go then.
Anyway, he dives in after her, and eventually him and the kids, they make plans of trying to get out if they can. Unfortunately, there's a blocked passage with a boulder on it, and they then quickly light a candle, but it's not a candle, it's the dynamite I mentioned earlier. And they light it, and then suddenly, bam! Unfortunately, the rocks shifted, but one boulder continues to block the passageway. And while this is happening, Ma and the other men are downstairs with One-Eyed Willie and his treasure, and she lifts the scales, and this sets off a trap inside One-Eyed Willie's ship. And they quickly evacuate without leaving all the gold behind. And while this is happening, rocks and boulders are hitting the water.
Yeah, the whole cave is caving in.
Yeah, somehow the dynamite has started a chain reaction, causing a lot of boulders to collapse into the water. And if they don't get out of there, they're going to be looking at could be crushed by these boulders.
There'll be people pate all over the place.
Yeah, eventually, thanks to Sloth, he was able to shift the boulder and allowed the kids to get out of there. Of course, he doesn't want to leave his mum and his brothers behind, so he stays behind
What a good Sloth.
while Chuck and his friends quickly get out. And soon enough, they meet up with the beach patrol or the highway.
Well, somebody, deputies, I don't know, I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah,
they had been looking for the kids. They couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah, the parents arrive in a van, and they all greet their kids, and there's hugs, kisses, exchange, all that stuff. And eventually...
and the kids try to tell them about where they'd been and whatever, and One-Eyed Willie and blah, blah, this and the other.
Yeah.
And no one believes them
until
they see...
Eventually, Troy and his dad arrive and wait before we get to that. The Fratellis arrive and the police were about to arrest them along with Sloth, but luckily enough, Chuck was able to interfere and say that Sloth is not a bad guy and that the Fratellis family was the bad guys. So they were arrested, but Sloth is going to stay with Chuck, according to the story.
Yeah, lovely. He didn't have his parents, though, did he?
Yeah, it was nice. Then eventually Troy and his father arrive with the final paperwork for Walsh to sign. To transfer the property or whatever, And Mikey tells his dad that they had their hands on the future and they blew it to save their lives. And Walsh says to his son that he's happy that his sons were safe, and that makes them the richest people in Astoria.
And the guy said, "No, I'm the richest person in Astoria."
Now he wants
to sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
What?
As Walsh
what a creep.
As Walsh is signing the paperwork slowly.
No, he didn't say he was getting ready to.
He's getting ready to sign.
The pen was poised.
Yeah. While this is happening, Rosla, who was with Walsh's parents when they arrived, she takes out of Mikey's jacket the marble bag he carries with him. He carries a marble bag in this movie, and she opens it up and sees the gems.
Yeah, Mikey threw his marbles out and filled it full of gems.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah, and she quickly informs this to Mrs. Walsh and pours the gems into her hand, and there we see them, and then Walsh announces to the wealthy guys and to the crowd that there will be no signing today or tomorrow or ever again. Meaning that now they can be able to pay off the mortgage and be able to save their community.
Probably have a couple of mortgages, I'd say. There's got the other people's houses too,
Yeah, that's the whole point. Eventually the media come and they try to get stories from the kids, and this is where I said before, they mentioned about the octopus, and that confuses me to no end why they never bought the octopus.
Because it's working for Ed Wood.
Yeah, it's such a shame this octopus never came into...
Get so many jobs.
Yeah, but it's still in the story, and people are probably confused to no end why they left this in. I don't know. Anyway, eventually the sheriff arrives and thinks this is another ploy of getting attention, considering Chuck is always doing this. And eventually he stops, he's rolling his eyes and sees in the distance One-Eye Willie's boat. And everyone is astonished. And
it came out of that cave that had been stuck in for all these years.
Yeah, somehow...
I have a question. If it was so easy to get out, why didn't One-Eyed Willie get out of there earlier on, before he died?
Well, they didn't have dynamite.
That's what... Oh, that's right, yeah.
Remember the dynamite chain had a chain reaction, and it kind of was opening up the entrance. And they probably didn't have any cannon fire or anything to not block the entrance.
Well, there you go then.
Anyway, so the boat begins to sail out, and Mikey watches and says, "Goodbye, Willie. Thanks." And eventually...
Hey, don't make him Free Willie.
Ha, 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 ha. And then Sloth lets out a battle cry again, and then all the rest of the group of Goonies begin to shout along with him. And then we watch One-Eye Willie's boat sail off into the sunrise, I should say, because this is early in the morning, so this is not a sunrise, it's a this is not a sunset, it's a sunrise. It's the end. I hope that covers it.
You know, she got through it faster than I thought, honestly.
I do think this is an awesome movie. I do hope that the reception equals that, our thoughts on this, I think. I just hope it's a good reception for the movie. Was it really good?
I'm not going to go through all of them, but generally speaking, everybody was happy with it.
Thank goodness.
Now, having said that, I didn't talk about it before. They don't normally do it.
Okay.
The budget was $19 million. It made $125 at the box office. Now, that obviously doesn't include home media, so I think they did pretty damn well.
That's a relief. I was worried that the reception would be like last time when we were reviewing a really hot, great movie, where they said this movie would be catered to the audience, even though its movies are like this supposed to cater to the audience. Wouldn't you be right, Mike?
Well, they're the ones who can actually pay for the tickets. So yes.
Yeah, so anyway, this is a movie meant for family viewing, as I say. I think some people probably would disagree with me and think it's too horrific or it's over.
Oh, anyway.
Okay, this will be interesting.
There is one bad one.
Uh-oh, this will be interesting.
A guy called Colin Greenland reviewed the Goonies for White Dwarf, whoever they are, and stated, "The Goonies I was unable to enjoy because of a bunch of kids yelling and screaming all the way through.
Oh, boy.
Not the audience, the actors. He didn't like the movie. He didn't enjoy it. Find the inner child and enjoy the movie. It is not really a kid movie, but it's a movie that kids can watch and enjoy and fantasize and everything. Oh, wouldn't it be great? But older people, parents can sit down and watch it without having their minds going numb and stuff. It's not a bad or all-round family entertainment. And I don't know what's wrong with some of these critics. They're fools. I'm 68 and I watched the other night and I still had a few chuckles about it. I enjoyed watching it. I'm not a kid. I'm not an idiot. I collect movies. I like horror. I like everything else. And these guys haven't got a freaking clue.
Oh, by the way, guys, One Eye Willie's skull was made from real bones.
Ew.
I mean, I've heard stories about how in movies, like the Poltergeist, they would often use real skulls with permission from whoever donates the bones, so and they would just use them as part of the I guess the production.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of good. I mean, I think these people are taking the time to use someone's bones to make a production.
I recognise that skull. That's my Uncle Fred. There you go. How's that? No?
Yeah.
No,
Well, it's just something interesting. It's just like all those movies we see that talk about how they would use real bodies or real bones.
Well, they sometimes do, yeah.
And donate them.
Some of the early skeletons they used in movies were actually real skeletons. They weren't scientific ones. Yeah, so
true.
they would have had, like, somewhere, I don't know where they got it from, a bone shop. Anyway, moving right along. I did mention before about the boat. It was always, they built the boat, and at the end of it, they just had to disassemble it or trash it because nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted the boat. So
Actually, according to this, I found something interesting about this boat. The pirate ship was entirely real. All the shots were filmed in the ship after the filming. It was offered to anyone who would take it. No one wanted it.
I just said that.
I know. It was scrapped.
Okay.
It was such a shame that it was scrapped. I would have loved it if it was somehow either donated to one of those film museums, maybe. It would be nice. I think it would be kind of cool. Go on.
Now, Richard Donner, the man who made the magic,
right?
With the kiddies, as a director, he said it was great to work with the kid. There was mixed difficulties and pleasures.
That's nice.
Working with so many child actors. He praised them for the energy and excitement, but also said that they were unruly when brought together. Hard to control.
I bet.
Well, the kids, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I found out something.
Don't work kids around.
Anyway, according to Sean Aston, I think.
Sean, baby.
Yeah, he was allowed to keep the treasure map used in the film.
Oh, wow.
Several years later, his mother, Paddy Duke, discovered it, thought it was a crumpled piece of paper, and threw it out into the bin.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, man. How some people are so stupid. But then again, he probably just kept it in his drawer, and no one even thought the wiser. I don't know. I would have loved to keep it in a frame and put it over my desk, something like that. Something memorable.
He should have framed it.
Yeah, I would have.
Yeah.
But he was probably only a 13-year-old and thought, not bothered.
He was married to Paddy Duke Aston, okay? He wasn't 13 at the time, okay? When he got older, he should have put it in a frame, okay?
This is his mum, Dad.
Eh?
Patty
Oh, that's
Duke
his
is
mum.
his
That's his mum.
mum.
Sorry, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Wrong age brackets. She was married to John Aston. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, but Mum's an idiot. Mum didn't see the movie.
Anyway, well, I think that she probably would have, considering this is a film in the film premiere that parents would be invited to their kids' production. Anyway, the song in the movie, makes a cameo, which is called "Goonies Are Good Enough," which was actually used as a music video and has sort of promoted this movie in a way. Wouldn't you say, Mike? That made made a cameo in this movie. It only made a few seconds of showing it, and then the rest was in the post credits eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, not the post credits. I mean, just the
Whatever.
credits.
I can't say anything more about this without going over the top. It's a good, fun adventure comedy
Fantasy.
thingy-wingy, and fantasy. And if you like Spielberg stuff, it's not.
And family. Sorry.
And it's not your typical family. It's not a typical sort of horror movie type stuff or sci-fi. It's aimed at younger people as well.
Yeah.
So it's a bit light-hearted. It's centered around kids, but still a good story. Look at Gremlins. That's a good movie.
Yeah, that's another movie that Steven Spielberg had a hand in it.
Now you look at Gremlins. To me, that was a kid movie.
Yeah, it also was mentioned in this movie as a bit of a in one of the scenes where Chuck is told one of his stories that he was making up, and someone decided to tell him, "Guess what? You told this story before, and you told us this one time about all these creatures that you multiply with water, yada yada yada." Sort of
sounded like Gremlins.
Yeah, I guess again, this is another film that has one of the kids stars from the Goonies in that movie too. In fact, I think he what's his name who plays Mouth again?
Yeah, that guy. Mouth. Corey Feldman.
Yeah, Corey Feldman. He's actually been, throughout his career in the 80s and probably in the 90s, he did a lot of kids' movies. He was in one of the Friday the 13th movies. He was in Gremlins, and he's in this one, obviously. And he was in, let me see. Puppet Master versus Demented Toys. I think this was years in the
movie
future.
that one was. Yeah.
Also, Sean Astin, he's also did a few kid-related movies after doing The Goonies, obviously. Most of it's not really as big as this one, obviously. He was in The Brat Patrol. He was in The Willies. Don't ask me.
I've heard of that.
And let me see, he was in Toy Soldiers. I think
I've heard of that one. I've seen it.
Which is not really eye popper.
Oh, I liked it.
It was pretty. It's not some movie. I mean, I grant it, but I don't think it developed a very big audience.
Yeah,
and of course, I mentioned earlier that he did Lord of the Rings as playing
that
Sam
was good
Gamgee.
for him. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sam Gamgee.
which is probably where he was probably promoting his movie, the movie, by going to the Supernova, as I mentioned. This is where I met him.
And kissed him.
Anyway,
enough.
So, do you want to rate this movie now?
Certainly. 10.
I'm going to rate this.
That's not because I like Steven Spielberg or anything else, but it's a good, fun movie, and it does tick all the boxes and everything. Everything is as it should be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they did a good job in this one, because I often think whenever a director develops a story like this, it takes me back to being a child who wishes to go on ventures and stuff like that. Oh, I should mention, Sean Astin also took part in the cameo or as an extra in Stranger Things, the TV series.
Yeah,
it's not one of my cup of teas, but I heard it's sort of similar to this type of movie because it deals with kids trying to solve mysteries and try to have adventures and stuff like that, which makes me think about the 80s movies a lot when you think about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to say I'm going to rate this movie 10 out of 10 myself.
Now, before we go, where to get it. Yes, guess what? It's still available.
Yes.
eBay has plenty, new and used copies, Blu-ray as well. Mm-hmm. Amazon has it on their site. It's rentable, and there are some for sale. So
Yippee.
if they've got it, you should be able to get it other places as well as.
Hooray.
Well,
That's a relief.
kiddies. No, good. Look, good. It's a good. It's a good movie that any age bracket can enjoy.
That's what I think I like
Yep.
about it. I
Yep.
mean, when you're an older adult and you still enjoy it. I mean,
Yeah, it's
there
a
are some
fun movie.
some of the things will stick to me will creep me out for all my life, but in a good creepy way, it's not as effective as when I got older.
Yeah.
I mean, like most of the other movies I've watched over the years that creeped me out and somehow stuck to me for a bit, and then eventually I was able to move on and move forward. And when I started seeing it years later, it didn't scare me as much as it did years ago.
I'll scare him out.
Anyway,
are we finished for tonight?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever watch this with my niece and nephew as yet. Maybe I would. Maybe
When they get a bit
a
older.
little bit more older. Maybe when they're 9 or 8.
Our little man's only just turned 5. I think it's a bit over his head.
Yeah, well,
And
he
the
was.
little one's 7, and she's probably getting close to it. But
Well, it hasn't stopped him from watching License to Kill with me the other night.
Oh, only a bit of it.
Yeah.
He likes James Bond stuff too. Yeah, come on, who wouldn't?
Well, he likes cars. Who can blame him?
Anyway, let's kill it.
Okay.
These people want to go to bed.
All right. Thanks for watching this. Listen to this latest episode, everyone. This is Sarah Stephenson
Yeah, and Morgul.
saying, "See you guys around. Bye for now."
Bye, guys.